Most of us have learned to play some blues licks along the way. I think if you're interested in playing guitar solos and improvised music, then the blues is a great place to start. And blues phrases are generally based on the pentatonic scale. That's sort of the foundation of that genre. But now you're also interested in playing jazz, and jazz phrases are quite different. If you have a jazz line, then the melody is sort of following the chords, it's based on the chords using scales and arpeggios. Quite different from what is happening when you're improvising on a blues. If you're improvising on a jazz blues, then you kind of need to find that place where those two things connect. So the place where you're playing over the chords and still playing jazz lines, but it has to sound like blues. Most of that is about phrasing. So in this video, I'm going to go over how you can take a jazz line and then add some phrasing ideas from the blues, and that way really hit that sweet spot where you make lines that really sound like Charlie Parker or Oscar Peterson or George Benson or Wes Montgomery. My name is Jens Larsen. Learn jazz, make music. I'm going to demonstrate this on a B-flat blues with a B-flat 7 line like this one. And in the video I'm going to use some different phrasing techniques, some different embellishments, and add some chromaticism, but really doing that in a way that makes it sound much more like a blues line and really get that part of the line out. And that's gonna make some interesting variations that are gonna sound a lot more like great jazz blues lines. This first example is using grace notes and especially slides to sort of compensate for the fact that we don't really use bends a lot when we're playing jazz. And one of the ways that you then do that is that you'll slide into a note instead. So here I'm sliding into the third of the dominant. And this is something that's really common. Actually, you'll find this in straight ahead blues as well. And it's just something that works really well to get sort of a blues sound. The whole thing about blues is also that we don't really know if the third is a major or a minor third. That's really a huge part of that sound. And this way of adding that leading note kind of works with that. So a little bit later I'm sliding down to the G from the A flat, so get this sound in there. And again, this is just to create some slightly surprising and break up the flow of the 8-note line, and in that way just add some blues flavor to it. The first example was really just the original melody, just with some added grace notes. Now in this example, I'm also changing the melody just a little bit, just to have some more variation. So here I have a grace note on the flat 7, so I'm just playing the same melody in the beginning, sliding up to the A flat, and then sliding into the 5th here. And very often when you have these grace notes, they're gonna be sort of to the basic chord tones in the chord. So that's really going to be sort of the triad notes. You're going to have slides into the 3rd, into the 5th. Now in this case I'm using the 7th as well, but you're also going to have them into the root, not so much to the higher extensions of the chord. The grace notes are really just chromatic leading notes that don't have a rhythmical value, so they're just added as sort of quick embellishments in front of a note. And of course we can do the same, but then really add a complete note in there. And that's what I'm doing in this first example. I'm starting on the B flat again, and then instead of going to the 3rd, I have this enclosure first. So I'm playing first the 4th, the E flat, and then down to the minor 3rd, and then resolving to the major 3rd. So the major 3rd is delayed, and I have this wrote into it before I continue up the arpeggio, adding a grace note to the 7th, so the A flat, and then the original ending. Instead of using a complete enclosure, we can of course also just use one approach note. And the most common one to take there is probably to take the minor 3rd and then resolve that up to the major 3rd. So that's what I'm doing here. And then I made sort of a slight variation on the original melody by moving the ending. In this example, I'm using a trill to play the leading note. And that's another way to also just kind of simulate that we have a bend in there. So here I'm just playing a trill of the minor third and the major third. And then a variation on the B flat 7 line, so with a grace note. And then ending on this high B flat. One thing you will see with the lines that sound more like blues is that they tend to really emphasize the lower chord tones, and they also tend to start and end on lower chord tones, much more than you will have in jazz. Using double stops is also something that's really often associated with the blues. You will find other examples of this with more modern players like Bill Frisell and John Scofield. But in general, it is something that we kind of connect with blues, and it's kind of coming from Chuck Berry. And I think that's also one of the places where he got that from boogie woogie piano players. And I think actually they got it from sort of the blues guitar players. So it is sort of going back and forth between different instruments. In this case, I'm first just starting with the original line, and then I'm adding some notes under it to create double stops. So that means that the basic skeleton is still. And then I'm just adding some chord tones under it here and there, so. And that's the basic idea here, that I'm just trying to add some notes that fit with the chord. I need to harmonize, or at least I choose to harmonize the G with this sort of E flat third, because it's resolving down to the third here in a nice way and creates sort of a suspension effect. That's also very common for blues, of course. Again, think of Chuck Berry. This example is sort of a harmonized version of the enclosure. So I'm starting with B flat and D, and then I'm going into the enclosure again, starting on the minor third, to just have this enclosure of the major third. And then I'm harmonizing that with thirds, so I get, and then adding a small melody, and then sliding up to a harmonized version of the flat 7, which is the flat 7 and the 5th. A great way to create some double stops that's also fairly easy to get into any melody is to use some high pedal point notes. This is something that you'll hear Wes do really a lot also. So here I'm doing that by just first playing a part of the arpeggio, so the basic triad, and then when I get to the flat 7, I'm adding the high root as a pedal point on top, and then I'm playing a melody with that note as a pedal point. So, and then after that I'm using the F as a pedal point, where I'm playing the F and the E flat, and then resolving. This kind of sounds like a B flat sus, and then I'm resolving that down to the major third. If you want to see some more examples of how you can create some great sounding blues licks, then check out this playlist where I have a few videos where I'm analyzing some blues phrases and going over how they're created and how you get your own blues phrases into your playing.